The smell of freshly decorated cinnamon dents filled the cafeteria, mixed with the delicious aroma of coffee. Blake walked deeply, enjoying the familiar smells, while he and his family settled into a cozy leather reserved. Brenda, his sister, came up to him with a mug of hot coffee and a smile on his face, as always. For everyone, he asked, his eyes shining. Blake just nodded in response, put his hand out on the table, and his palm touched Vanessa's cold fingers. The sparkle of her wedding ring sparkled in the soft morning light. "You know us too well, sister," 12-year-old Ellie chimed in. "Can I order more whipped cream and hot chocolate?" "And he is not 8 years old," added excitedly. "Me too," Brenda laughed in a playful way, messing up Noah's hair. "As I wished in children, but don't tell your dentist," she said, smiling. Brenda headed back to the kitchen, leaving Blake alone with Vanessa. "How are you, my love? Is a new project bothering you?" Blake asked. Vanessa's smile seemed forced. "Do you know how it is? There's always one more task to complete. Another deadline to meet," he said as he looked at the time on his watch. "Speaking of which, I have to go. I have a meeting with a client at 10, he said hurriedly. Blake looked confused. "But today is Sunday. I thought we were going to take the kids to the park after breakfast," he said, confused. Vanessa replied sharply. "I know, I'm so sorry. It could be a great sale, you know that, right?" he added, looking at Blake expectantly. Before he could respond, he intervened. "Mom, you promised to help me choose an outfit for the photo day tomorrow." Vanessa's expression softened, and she turned to her daughter. "Oh dear, I completely forgot about it. How about you and I go shopping this afternoon? We're going to have a fun girls' day." Noah's disappointment was evident when he asked, and Blake quickly stepped in. "Hey, why don't we all go to the park after shopping? Will be a great family outing. Hey, buddy, how about you and I go for a walk today? We can play basketball in the driveway and make lunch on the grill. What do you think?" Blake asked. Noah's face lit up. "Can we ask Uncle Mike to join us?" Noah asked. "Sure," Blake replied, stroking his son's hair. Blake looked at Vanessa, and there was a hint of sadness in her expression. "You thought we'll see each other tonight, Vanessa," he said. Vanessa nodded slightly, avoiding his gaze. "I'll try not to get stuck in," she replied. Brenda appeared with a tray carrying hot cups and plates with fluffy pancakes and crispy bacon. He put the food on the table and looked at his brother. Blake nodded at him encouragingly. After that, the family began to eat, switching to lighter topics. Ellie was talking excitedly about her upcoming science project, and Noah excitedly recounted the highlights from his recent Little League game. Blake put his worries out of his mind and decided to dive in, completely in the present moment with their loved ones. After finishing breakfast, Vanessa packed her things and got ready to leave. She said goodbye to the children, kissed them, and gave a soft kiss on Blake's cheek, promising to call him later. He nodded silently, watching her quickly leave the cafeteria. Despite the persistent feeling of anxiety, he dismissed it as unfounded. Their lives were full of happiness, and they were a prosperous family. Maybe I was just thinking too much. Brenda sat quietly in the reserved one next to her brother. When the children finished eating, he asked, barely whispering, "Everything's fine, little brother." Blake forced a smile. "Sure," he said. Brenda raised an eyebrow. "You can't fool me, Blake. I've always known you. There's something on your mind." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "It's nothing special. It's just that Vanessa has been overwhelmed with work lately. I'm sure everyone will be sorted out soon," he said. Brenda squeezed his shoulder in a comforting way. "Do you know that I'm always here without you needing to talk? You don't need someone to put some common sense in that hard head," he said with a smile. Blake laughed, appreciating his sister's unwavering support. "Thank you, Brenda. I'll remember that," he replied. Leaving the cafe, a feeling of uneasiness began to form in the stomach from Blake. But he pushed her away, deciding to focus on the day ahead and his children. They had a happy and eventful life. He reminded himself, the perfect family that I valued more than anything in the world. 2 weeks later, when Blake was working on the engine of a worn-out Ford, the familiar sounds of the motor seat and grease filled the workshop. The radio was playing with an old country song playing in the background, and he was absently humming too. Himself. The sound of heels on the concrete floor interrupted his thoughts, and he looked up to see Lisa Grant, Vanessa's close friend and colleague, approaching him with a hesitant smile. "Hey, Blake," he said. Blake, wiping his hands with a rag, looked at her curiously. "Hi, Lisa." Lisa fiddled nervously with the strap of her purse. "I was hoping to see Vanessa. We were supposed to have coffee, but he's not answering the phone. I thought maybe he was with you," Lisa said. Blake's eyebrows furrowed. "She mentioned that she has a late show today. He said he wouldn't be back until after dinner." Blake replied. Lisa frowned, sleepily embarrassed. "It's weird. He asked me to come to Brenda's cafeteria at 4, insisting that it was urgent. He left, Lisa." Blake felt a knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. There may be a scheduling error or an unexpected meeting with a client. Blake said, doubtful. Lisa nodded, though there was doubt in her expression. "If you see her, can you tell her that you are walking by to say hello?" he asked. Blake nodded, smiling slightly. When Lisa was about to leave, he called her. "Hey, Lisa. Vanessa has been acting different lately." Lisa Bassilo. His eyes closed slightly. "What do you mean?" I asked. Blake shrugged his shoulders, feigning indifference. "I'm not sure. Does it seem to you that Vanessa is more distant or worried?" I asked Blake. Lisa's face remained impassive. "Maybe it's just stress at work, Blake. The real estate sector is a complex industry in which you always have to achieve good results," he replied. "I agree with you." "Thank you, Lisa," Blake said. When she left, Blake could not get rid of the feeling of anxiety in the air. Not knowing what was bothering him, he hesitated before deciding to call Vanessa. But he finally abandoned the idea, considering his fears and paranoia. The next night, Blake and his friend Mike ended up at the OMALS bar, located near. After a basketball game, Blake sat down at the bar and took a swig of beer, trying to relax. Mike, who was sitting next to her, took a sip of his drink and in a casual tone, asked, "How's everything going with Vanessa?" "Yes, everything seems to be fine. She's been working a lot lately," Blake replied. Blake raised an eyebrow, sensing something else behind Blake's impassive response. "Can you guess? Guess? This doesn't sound like the Blake I know. What's really going on?" Mike asked. Blake sighed distractedly, twirling his wedding ring. "I don't know, dude. There's just something wrong. Vanessa is always busy, always distracted," Blake replied. "Our conversations have become weird. And when we talk, it seems like he's in a completely different world," Blake said. "Sadly, have you tried to solve this with her?" Mike asked. Blake shook his head. "When I try to talk about this, she mentioned the stress at work. But I can't shake the feeling that there is something deeper here," Blake said. Mike leaned over to him and spoke softly. "You don't think that, well, you know he's unfaithful to you?" Mike asked. Blake dismissed the thought, but there was a hint of doubt in his voice. "No way. Vanessa would never betray me like that," Blake said. "We've been together since high school." Blake said quietly. "People change, Blake. I'm not saying she's like that, but maybe you should trust your gut. If something seems wrong, then it is," Mike said softly. Before Blake could answer, his phone vibrated. A message for Vanessa. "Still at work. Don't wait." Blake looked at the message and his stomach tightened. When he looked up, he saw Mike looking at him anxiously. "Everything okay?" Mike asked. Blake forced a smile as he read Vanessa's message, which said she was working. "Late again." Mike's worried expression made him think about the possibility of making a small research for your own peace of mind. When they left the bar, Blake couldn't get rid of the doubts that had infiltrated his mind. Despite his unwavering trust in Vanessa, he couldn't help but wonder if he should follow Mike's advice. What if people really have the ability to change? With that thought in mind, he spontaneously decided to stop by Vanessa's office on his way home. When he reached the parking lot, his heart leapt together as he realized that his car, he was nowhere to be found. A feeling of anxiety enveloped him, forcing him to take out the phone. After a moment of hesitation, he dialed Vanessa's number. The phone rang several times before switching to voicemail. "Hi, it's me," he said at the mailbox. "I just want to get in touch with you. Call me as soon as you can." With a deep sigh, I hang up. Across the street, Blake noticed a familiar face. Courts Blackwood, the mortgage broker he had come across in some of the Vanessa's work events. Courts smiled as he got into his luxury sports car. Seeing him leave, Blake felt uncomfortable. Something about seeing Courts at that moment made him shudder inside. As I was walking home, Blake's mind was racing, trying to make sense of the situation, and to the ominous feeling that I wouldn't let him. Despite the fact that Blake was trying to dispel his doubts and focus on trust and love that she shared with Vanessa, she struggled with a constant sense of insecurity that it had settled into his mind. It seemed that the idyllic life he imagined with Vanessa might not be as perfect as I was thinking. A week passed, and Blake was in Hank Morrison's small, dirty office, a private investigator recommended by a friend. Sitting across from a detective, Blake couldn't get rid of the feeling of anxiety that he had invaded it. The mess around her reflected the chaos she felt inside. In Hank's office, filing cabinets covered the walls and the worn leather chair. It creaked under his weight as he sat up. Then, Mr. Kincaid began Hank in a hoarse voice. "Tell me, why are you here?" Blake shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I think my wife might be connected to someone else," Blake said uncertainly. Hank nodded, his neutral expression as he listened intently. "What makes you suspect this?" Hank asked. Blake took a deep breath and continued. "She is often late for work. He is constantly talking on the phone. We don't talk much, and last week I noticed his car parked outside a hotel instead, to be at the scheduled screening." Blake said with a sigh. "Have you talked to her about this?" Hank asked. Blake shook his head. "I wanted to confirm first. I don't want to falsely accuse her." Blake replied. Hank leaned back in his chair. "Well, that's the plan. We will observe her for a week, collecting evidence, photos, recordings, everything. But be prepared, Mr. Kincaid. The truth can be unpleasant." Hank said. Blake's jaw tightened. "I need to know, Mr. Morrison. Whatever is in command, Blake." When he left the office, his phone vibrated. A message for Vanessa appeared on the screen. "Hi, honey. I have a late appointment. Don't wait for dinner." Blake squeezed the phone hard. He responded quickly. "That's fine. I love you." After that, he put the device away. Her heart began to beat with anxiety. For the next few days, Blake was gripped by anxiety and the doubt, carefully analyzing every conversation and text message. Every step Vanessa took seemed like a puzzle that Blake needed to unravel. She was leading a life, seemingly oblivious to the storm raging inside him. But on Friday night, everything changed. Blake's phone rang. When he saw that it was Hancock who was calling, he realized that something was not right. The urgency in Hank's voice made Blake drive immediately to his office. As he entered, he noticed the detective's grim expression and the way he indicated to him with a gesture for him to sit down. Hancock's words confirmed his worst fears. "I'm sorry, Mr. Kincaid," Hank said, and Blake's heart gave out. Blake placed the overhandle on the table. His suspicions were confirmed. With trembling hands, he carefully opened the envelope. The contents of the envelope were shocking. Photos of Vanessa and Cardi's Blackwood capturing intimate moments near a motel. Each photo was accompanied by a time stamp and an indication of the place, not leaving. There are doubts about his guilt. Blake felt a wave of nausea run through him. "So long, Musito," his voice barely above a whisper. Hank sighed heavily, realizing that the truth would be hard to digest. Blake spent several minutes sitting in the car, trying to gather his thoughts and emotions before facing Vanessa. The betrayal he felt was like a weight on his chest, squeezing him more with every second. How could she do this to him, to his family? The life they had built together now seemed like a facade a lie destroyed in just a moment. After taking a deep breath, Blake finally summoned up the courage, walked out from the car, and headed to the front door. The sound of his footsteps on the Ashira was like a drum, announcing the impending conflict that was waiting for him inside. As he entered the house, he heard Vanessa's voice coming from the kitchen. His heart clenched to listen to her, realizing that she was waiting for him. Gathering his strength, Blake opened the kitchen door and came face to face with his wife. Vanessa's expression as she looked at him was a mixture of guilt and defiance. Blake felt anger and pain rising up in him, but he repressed them, trying to stay calm. Seeing her next to him, so carefree and ordinary, he felt how a fire was lit in his veins. "Hi, honey." Vanessa greeted him with a smile, but the smile quickly disappeared as she noticed his behavior. "Blake, what's wrong with you?" he asked. Furious, Blake threw the envelope on the counter. "Why don't you enlighten me, Vanessa?" he asked her. Vanessa froze to finish the envelope, her hands shaking as she looked at the pictures. Blake, I can explain. He busted. Blake's voice sounded firmly threatening as he spoke to her. How do you explain that you lied to me for months? How did you sneak out with Curtis Blackwood behind my back? He demanded. Tears welled up from Vanessa's eyes as she tried to find the words. Appropriate. I'm so sorry, Blake. I never wanted this to happen. He whispered. Blake's composure completely deteriorated as he demanded an explanation from her. What didn't you want? What did he allow you? Have you ever wanted to cheat on me? Didn't you want to destroy our family? Vanessa started crying as she tried to defend herself. It's not like that, she cried. You don't understand. I felt trapped like I couldn't breathe. Curtis gave me my life back. Valbucio, Vanessa. Blake laughed contemptuously. And what about that? What made our relationship so unbearable that you had to look for emotions elsewhere? What angry Blake? Vanessa's face turned cold. Do you want to be honest? Okay, yeah. I was with Curtis, and I don't feel guilty about it. He communicates with me in a way that you will never be able to. Vanessa said. Blake felt a hugging pain as if he had been hit in the face. And our children, Vanessa, you thought about them while having fun with Curtis. But did Blake ask? Vanessa, I do know. Don't you dare involve the kids in this. They're not to blame for anything. He said. They're here. Grinio Blake. You didn't just betray me, Vanessa. You betrayed our whole family. He added. Vanessa's eyes flashed with anger. Do you want to know why I did it? Because I'm sick of this mundane life, Blake. I'm tired of the monotonous routine day after day. He said. I'm tired of being just a wife and mother. That's all you see in me. Vanessa continued. Blake stared at her, and her familiar face now seemed distant. And now what? Are you going to file for divorce? Blake asked. Vanessa looked at him with a determined expression. Maybe yes. Maybe it's time to admit that it doesn't work anymore. He answered in a low voice. Blake felt a surge of determination. What's great? Do you want to leave? Come on, let's go. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let you take my children. Blake said. We'll see. Vanessa replied. Vanessa laughed mockingly. In the courts, they will always be on my side. He said arrogantly. Blake replied in a cold tone. We'll see. He muttered. But I can guarantee you one thing, Vanessa. I will fight for my children and do everything to make the truth about you known. To everyone, he added. With that, Blake stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Vanessa in shock. As he walked away, Blake was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and pain. Despite everything, a fierce determination was born in him. I didn't want to let Vanessa ruin everything I'd been building for so long. Blake was sitting in his car, parked in front of a modest house in Los Suas, his Burbios grabbing the steering wheel with his fingers. I was looking at the entrance, gathering courage. After a moment, he exhaled deeply and got out of the car. He started walking toward the door, and suddenly it opened. A woman with warm eyes and an uncertain smile was in front of him. Welcome, she said, inviting him in. Blake nodded gratefully as he entered Mrs. Blackwood's house. Thank you for having me, Marissa, he said. She let him in and offered him a drink. But he rejected her. Price that you took the time to meet with me, especially considering all. What's going on? He continued. Marissa's smile faded when she mentioned her husband, Curtis, and Blake knew. That was time to share the information. His face turned serious as he spoke. I have something to tell you, and we're going to say that it won't be very pleasant, said Blake, seriously. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to Marissa. His hands trembled as he opened it. What is this? He asked in a barely audible voice. These are photos that prove your partner's infidelity, Blake said. Blake explained in a soft but determined voice. Marissa looked at the photos in disbelief. No, he murmured, shaking his head. This can't be happening. I'm sorry, Marissa. I didn't want to believe it either, but the truth is that Vanessa, my wife, and your husband had an affair for several months, Blake admitted. Marissa's eyes filled with ugrimas as she assimilated this horrendous revelation. How do you know that? He asked with a trembling voice. Blake sighed deeply and confessed. Try a private investigator. I had my suspicions, but I needed concrete proof. Marissa's voice was empty when she answered. And now you have them. With mixed feelings, he asked, "Why are you showing it to me? Why not confront them directly?" Blake leaned towards her with a face full of regret and sadness. "We can work on this together, Marissa. Those who betrayed us must answer for their actions. What do you think about the consequences for them?" Blake asked. Marissa's face turned serious. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "I think we should reveal the truth about them," Blake suggested. "Not just for us, but for everyone. Let the world see their true faces," he added. Marissa paused. "I doubt I'm not sure about that, Blake. It seems radical to me," he said with a sigh. "Is it really like that?" Blake objected. "They deceived us, betrayed our trust, and wove secret intrigues," he said. "We got sundered. Don't you think they should experience the same punishment?" Blake exclaimed. Marissa got up from her seat and started walking around the room. "But what about the children? Your children, my adopted children. Do you want to hurt them too?" he asked. Blake resigned himself. "I've been thinking about that, but I think it will be useful for them to find out the truth in the end, and we will be able to protect them from the consequences as much as possible," he said. Marissa stopped and turned to Blake. "What do you mean?" he asked. Blake replied, "We can use social media to expose them. We live in a small town. We will tell everyone about their secret relationship. We will spread this news everywhere," Blake said. And after that, Marissa asked. As he entered the house, he heard Vanessa's voice coming from the kitchen. His heart clenched to listen to her, realizing that she was waiting for him. Gathering his strength, Blake opened the kitchen door and came face to face with his wife. Vanessa's expression as she looked at him was a mixture of guilt and defiance. Blake felt anger and pain rising up in him, but he repressed them, trying to stay calm. Seeing her next to him, so carefree and ordinary, he felt how a fire was lit in his veins. "Hi, honey." Vanessa greeted him with a smile, but the smile quickly disappeared as she noticed his behavior. "Blake, what's wrong with you?" he asked. Furious, Blake threw the envelope on the counter. "Why don't you enlighten me, Vanessa?" he asked her. Vanessa froze to finish the envelope, her hands shaking as she looked at the pictures. "Blake, I can explain," he busted. Blake's voice sounded firmly threatening as he spoke to her. "How do you explain that you lied to me for months? How did you sneak out with Curtis Blackwood behind my back?" he demanded. Tears welled up from Vanessa's eyes as she tried to find the words appropriate. "I'm so sorry, Blake. I never wanted this to happen," he whispered. Blake's composure completely deteriorated as he demanded an explanation from her. "What didn't you want? What did he allow you? Have you ever wanted to cheat on me? Didn't you want to destroy our family?" Vanessa started crying as she tried to defend herself. "It's not like that," she cried. "You don't understand. I felt trapped like I couldn't breathe. Curtis gave me my life back." "Balbucio, Vanessa." Blake laughed contemptuously. "And what about that? What made our relationship so unbearable that you had to look for emotions elsewhere? What angry Blake?" Vanessa's face turned cold. "Do you want to be honest?" "Okay, yeah. I was with Curtis, and I don't feel guilty about it. He communicates with me in a way that you will never be able to," Vanessa said. Blake felt a hugging pain as if he had been hit in the face. "And our children, Vanessa, you thought about them while having fun with Curtis. But did Blake ask?" "Vanessa, I do know. Don't you dare involve the kids in this. They're not to blame for anything," he said. "They're here. Grinio Blake. You didn't just betray me, Vanessa. You betrayed our whole family," he added. Vanessa's eyes flashed with anger. "Do you want to know why I did it? Because I'm sick of this mundane life, Blake. I'm tired of the monotonous routine day after day," he said. "I'm tired of being just a wife and mother. That's all you see in me," Vanessa continued. Blake stared at her, and her familiar face now seemed distant. "And now what? Are you going to file for divorce?" Blake asked. Vanessa looked at him with a determined expression. "Maybe yes. Maybe it's time to admit that it doesn't work anymore," he answered in a low voice. Blake felt a surge of determination. "What's great? Do you want to leave? Come on, let's go. But don't think for a second that I'm going to let you take my children," Blake said. "We'll see," Vanessa replied. Vanessa laughed mockingly. "In the courts, they will always be on my side," he said arrogantly. Blake replied in a cold tone. "We'll see," he muttered. "But I can guarantee you one thing, Vanessa. I will fight for my children and do everything to make the truth about you known. To everyone, he added. With that, Blake stormed out of the kitchen, leaving Vanessa in shock. As he walked away, Blake was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, betrayal, and pain. Despite everything, a fierce determination was born in him. I didn't want to let Vanessa ruin everything I'd been building for so long. Blake was sitting in his car, parked in front of a modest house in Los Suas, his Burbios grabbing the steering wheel with his fingers. I was looking at the entrance, gathering courage. After a moment, he exhaled deeply and got out of the car. He started walking toward the door, and suddenly it opened. A woman with warm eyes and an uncertain smile was in front of him. "Welcome," she said, inviting him in. Blake nodded gratefully as he entered Mrs. Blagwood's house. "Thank you for having me, Marissa," he said. She let him in and offered him a drink. But he rejected her. "Price that you took the time to meet with me, especially considering all. What's going on?" he continued. Marissa's smile faded when she mentioned her husband, Curtis, and Blake knew. That was time to share the information. His face turned serious as he spoke. "I have something to tell you, and we're going to say that it won't be very pleasant," said Blake, seriously. He reached into his pocket, pulled out an envelope, and handed it to Marissa. His hands trembled as he opened it. "What is this?" he asked in a barely audible voice. "These are photos that prove your partner's infidelity," Blake said. Blake explained in a soft but determined voice. Marissa looked at the photos in disbelief. "No," he murmured, shaking his head. "This can't be happening." "I'm sorry, Marissa. I didn't want to believe it either, but the truth is that Vanessa, my wife, and your husband had an affair for several months," Blake admitted. Marissa's eyes filled with ugrimas as she assimilated this horrendous revelation. "How do you know that?" he asked with a trembling voice. Blake sighed deeply and confessed. "Try a private investigator. I had my suspicions, but I needed concrete proof." Marissa's voice was empty when she answered. "And now you have them." With mixed feelings, he asked, "Why are you showing it to me? Why not confront them directly?" Blake leaned towards her with a face full of regret and sadness. "We can work on this together, Marissa. Those who betrayed us must answer for their actions. What do you think about the consequences for them?" Blake asked. Marissa's face turned serious. "What do you suggest?" he asked. "I think we should reveal the truth about them," Blake suggested. "Not just for us, but for everyone. Let the world see their true faces," he added. Marissa paused. "I doubt I'm not sure about that, Blake. It seems radical to me," he said with a sigh. "Is it really like that?" Blake objected. "They deceived us, betrayed our trust, and wove secret intrigues," he said. "We got sundered. Don't you think they should experience the same punishment?" Blake exclaimed. Marissa got up from her seat and started walking around the room. "But what about the children? Your children, my adopted children. Do you want to hurt them too?" he asked. Blake resigned himself. "I've been thinking about that, but I think it will be useful for them to find out the truth in the end, and we will be able to protect them from the consequences as much as possible," he said. Marissa stopped and turned to Blake. "What do you mean?" he asked. Blake replied, "We can use social media to expose them. We live in a small town. We will tell everyone about their secret relationship. We will spread this news everywhere," Blake said. And after that, Marissa asked. The door creaked and a formal, shrunken man entered, scanning the room anxiously before noticing Blake. "Mr. Conke," the man asked, sitting at the table in front of him. Blake nodded in appreciation. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me," Blake said. Frank Toy, partner of Curtis. He settled himself uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't quite understand why this and here." He admitted a note of uncertainty in his voice. "If this has to do with Curtis and your wife." Blake raised his hand to stop him, but then he continued, "It's related, but not in the way you think. I have some information that I think you will be interested in." Frank raised an eyebrow curiously, which made Blake come closer and lower to the voice. "I have information that could save your business," Blake said. Frank was surprised at this discovery. "What do you mean?" he asked. Blake hesitated before revealing the secret. "Curtis and Vanessa have been conspiring to embezzle the company's money and run away together," Blake said with a sly smile. Frank's heart began to beat hard. This is a serious accusation. Do you have proof? What kind of evidence? Asked his trembling voice. Blake nodded confidently. Yes, I have them, but I need your help to stop them, he said with his eyes shining. Frank hesitated, unsure about what to do next. I didn't know that by getting involved in this case, I could risk everything. His fingers made a steady rhythm on the table before he finally broke the silence. What exactly should I do? Frank asked. Blake's smile, now tinged with a hint of darkness. It was expanded. Just pretend. Act like you're on his side. Stop believing that they are deceiving us. Blake replied firmly. We'll catch them in the act, and we'll have all the evidence we need to take them down. Frank ran a hand through his hair, feeling the full weight of the plan rolled in. This is crazy. I could lose everything if everything goes wrong, Frank said, with fear. Blake countersued. If you do nothing, you risk losing everything. But if you act now, you'll have a chance to save your reputation and your company. Frank took a deep breath and reluctantly agreed. That's fine. I'm counting on you. But first I need to see the evidence. Blake reached into his pocket, and he pulled out a USB stick, giving herself to Frank across the table. Everything you need is here. Emails, bank statements, recordings of conversations. Take a look at them, and then we will discuss our next steps, Blake said. When Frank took the USB stick and left the room, Blake felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The trap was already set. All that was left was for Cordy and Vanessa to keep quiet in it. The next day, Blake met with Marissa in a cozy cafe to discuss the progress of the work. How was it with Frank? She asked, absently taking in his late. Blake relaxed in his seat, with a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Surprisingly well. He's on our side now. We just have to stay calm and see how Cordy and Vanessa fit their own graves, Blake replied. Marissa's worried expression, it reflected his own uneasiness. I still can't believe that they have fallen into embezzlement. It's like I've never met Cordy, Marissa said. People can be so unpredictable, Blake said gravely. At that moment, a message from Frank. It showed up on Blake's phone. Cordy has fallen into the trap. There is a meeting scheduled for Friday to discuss an investment opportunity, said the message. What should we do next? Frank asked. Blake shared the message with Marissa. It seems that the case is moving forward faster than we expected, Blake said. The hands of Marissa, they trembled as he put his cup down on the table. We can really get on with this. We should send them to prison, he asked. Blake's gaze softened. We're not setting them up, Marissa. We're just giving them the opportunity to make their own decisions. They decided to break the law on their own, Blake said. Marissa nodded thoughtfully. You have a point. I never thought I would be in this situation. None of us knew that, Blake admitted. But now we have to finish the job, for me and for the sake of the children, he said firmly. When Blake came out of the coffee shop, couldn't get rid of the feeling that they had reached a critical point. The plan of revenge was gaining strength. Ibaneza and Curtis were about to be targeted. In the evening, Blake received another call from Frank. They're acting, Frank said urgently. Curtis wants to make the transfer to this weekend. Blake's heart began to beat hard. Can you give us some time? Blake asked. I tried. Frank answered his palpable disappointment. But we need to act fast before anyone suspects anything. Blake was pacing up and down the living room, his mind working at full speed. Delete the plan, he said. Let him believe that everything is going according to plan. But we must inform the authorities. Can you do it without arousing suspicion? Blake asked. Frank paused for a moment before answering. I think so. I have a friend in the white-collar crime department. I can warn you and make it look like a routine check. Great, Blake replied. Thank you, Frank. After ending the call, Blake dialed Marissa's number to give you the latest news. Is it happening? He informed her when she answered the phone. This weekend? Marissa asked hesitantly, his voice strained with emotion. Did we make the right decision? Blake asked, sigh. To be honest, I'm not sure. But I know for a fact that what they're doing is wrong. And if we don't intervene, who will? He said. When she hung up, Blake's gaze fell on a family photo. On the mantelpiece, it showed him, Vanessa, and their children smiling happily. It seemed like an eternity had passed since that moment. I'm sorry about how it all ended, he mumbled looking at the picture. But you left me no choice. The plan was set in motion, and now it only remained to carry it out. On Monday morning, Blake was woken up by the phone. He replied drowsily. "Hey." Frank's urgent voice came over the line. "Blake, you need to turn on the news immediately." Blake, already fully alert, reached for the remote control, and he turned on the TV. Her eyes widened as she read the headline that appeared at the bottom of the screen. The news that the local company had been shaken by an embezzlement scandal surprised him. A young reporter appeared on the screen, with determination in the eyes. "I'm Emily Green, reporting live from Blackwood Mortgage Services." In a surprising turn of events, the founder of the company, Cardi's Blackwood, he has been arrested on embezzlement charges, he announced. A message from Marissa arrived on Blake's phone. "Do you see this?" he asked back. Without hesitation, Blake replied, "Yes, you can come." 20 minutes later, Marissa arrived, pale and trembling. "I can't believe it actually worked," he said, dropping down on Blake's couch. Blake nodded solemnly. "Frank did it," he told the reporter, Emily Green. Marissa's eyes widened in surprise. Since he found out all the details so quickly, he asked. Blake confessed, "Maybe I had something to do with it. I contacted her last week and told her about the situation." Blake knew he was taking a risk, and if she had spoken before they were ready. Marissa asked, "Did you say too much?" Blake shook his head, incredulous. He just gave her a hint. Nothing serious. She guessed it for herself. Just when Blake was considering the consequences, his phone vibrated again. It was Lisa calling. "Blake, have you heard the news? They're everywhere. Vanessa was arrested," Lisa said. Blake's heart began to beat hard. "What? How? What did you start asking?" "Just a moment ago. I was a witness," Lisa confirmed. They arrived at Vanessa's office and were taken out in handcuffs, which caused chaos. Blake cut the conversation short and met Marissa's gaze, informing him that Vanessa had also been arrested. The reality of the situation hit Marissa, and a mixture of emotions was reflected on his face. A doubt arose in her, and she asked Blake if they had overdone it. Before I could answer, they were interrupted by a knock at the door. As he opened it, Blake saw Emily Green from Channel Sonky News, with a notebook in his hands. "Mr. Kincaid, what's the matter?" he asked. "Can I get your statement on the arrest of Cordis Blackwood and Vanessa Kincaid?" Blake hesitated before nodding. "Come in, Miss Green. I think it's time to tell the whole story," he replied. While Emily was installing the recording equipment, Blake and Marissa exchanged a knowing look. There was no turning back now. "Mr. Kincaid," began Emily, "could you explain how you first discovered the theft scheme?" Taking a breath, Blake prepared to tell the truth. "It all started when I found out my wife was cheating on me with Cordis Blackwood. By understanding the situation, I discover only the betrayal, but also a tangled web of financial deceit and fraud." Blake began. Emily leaned forward impatiently, her eyes shining with curiosity. "And how did you manage to gather the evidence that led to today's arrests?" he asked. Blake pointed to Marissa. "Not just me," I explained. "Marissa Blackwood, the wife of Cordis. He played an important role in our research. We worked together with Cordis' partner Frank Doyle to get to the truth." Marissa spoke bravely, her voice trembling but firm. She was aware of the injustice of someone hurting innocent people and robbed them of their hard-earned money. Emily turned to Marissa, acknowledging the difficult situation in which he was because of the arrest of her husband. Marissa's eyes were filled with the ugrimas, but he kept his composure, expressing Livy by the fact that the truth, it had come to light. Cordis made his decision, and now he will have to face the consequences, he said. During the interview, Blake experienced mixed feelings. He felt Livy because the truth was being revealed, but also sadness for the pain this would bring to their children. He felt a deep anxiety about the future. After Emily left, assuring him that the interview would be broadcast that evening, Blake turned to Marissa. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I think so. Dunno," Marissa said, her voice shaking. Standing by the window, Blake was relieved to read a message from his lawyer, Angela. "We need to talk about the next steps in the battle for custody. Can you come back tomorrow?" Angela asked. Blake showed the message to Marissa, who reassured him. "It seems that this is just the beginning. We'll get through this, Blake, step by step." When Marissa left, Blake watched as the neighborhood comes to life, feeling a weight lifted from his shoulders. He knew that with Marissa by his side, they could face any difficulties. Looking around, Blake noticed the quiet conversations. No doubt about the scandal that had rocked to their formerly peaceful community. In the following days and weeks, he was preparing for the inevitable scrutiny, the condemnations, and the harsh questions of their children. In spite of the uncertainty that was, for the first time in many years, he felt a spark of hope. The truth had finally come out, and Blake was able to focus on rebuilding his life and protect their loved ones. Together with her lawyer, Angela Martinez, Blake sat in the family courtroom, feeling a palpable tension in the air. Vanessa shot him a penetrating look. Her previously flawless appearance is now in disarray. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s, he put order in the room. We are meeting today to make a decision about Ellie's custody and not to Concad. He announced, Mr. Concad requests full custody of the children, with a limited number of visits with Mrs. Concad. Mrs. Concad, for her part, is asking for joint custody. Let's start with the opening statements. Or no. Angela got up from her seat, her voice calm and determined. Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that the recent actions of Mrs. Concad, including his affair and his involvement in financial crimes, they make her an incapable mother. Mr. Concad has been a stable and loving presence in the lives of their children, and giving him full custody is in their best interest. Angela said, Vanessa's lawyer, an attractive man in a suit caro, object. Your Honor, even if my client has made mistakes, she is still a loving mother. We ask the court to take into account your ability to take care of their children. We have proposed joint custody as the option, more suitable for Ellie and Noah. Vanessa's lawyer added. While the witnesses were giving their testimony, Blake was facing the emotions of the difficult past months. Lisa was the first to speak. Angela asked, Mr. Enlarge, how long have you known Vanessa Concad for? Lisa looked at Vanessa before answering. Almost 10 years. We have been colleagues and friends since she joined the real estate agency. And what do you think about their capabilities? Angela asked. Lisa paused for a moment before answering. Regarding the recent behavior of Mrs. Concad, Vanessa became distant and reserved, often canceling plans at the last minute and justifying themselves with urgent matters at work. But as it turned out to be, she was dating Curtis at the time. Lisa said, when the lawyer asked him another question. Lisa hesitated before admitting that perhaps those urgent matters, they were justified, since the career of a real estate people, it takes a lot of effort. The lawyer abruptly had the interrogation. Then, Marissa was called to testify. Angela approached cautiously. Mrs. Blackwood, could you explain your relationship with Vanessa Concad? Marissa accepted. At first I thought that Vanessa was just an employee of my husband. But when I found out about the romance and the embezzlement conspiracy, it became clear that she was actively involved, cheating on our company, and he was plotting to abandon the family. Marissa said. Vanessa's lawyer quickly intervened. Mrs. Blackwood, it is possible to say that you are biased against Mrs. Concad because of her past relationship with her husband? He asked. Marissa responded quickly and decisively. I'm only worried about the truth and the welfare of those who may be affected, especially Blake's kids. Marissa replied. Blake was eventually called to testify, and Angela smiled encouragingly. Ellie and Noah are my everything. Been with them every step of the way, from supporting them at Little League games to participate in science exhibitions. Even in the difficult moments with Vanessa, I always made sure they felt love and support. Blake said, when asked how he was coping with the situation. After the breakup, Blake admitted that it was not easy. However, I try to maintain his usual lifestyle whenever I can. I also have them meet with a psychologist to help them get through everything that's going on. Blake said. When Vanessa's lawyer approached, Blake's eyes buried themselves, and you could tell the attention was in the air. It is true that he turned his children against their mother by polluting their minds with information about their romance. Vanessa's lawyer asked. Blake's jaw tensed. Absolutely not. He went into this with them so that they could understand, but I never told them anything bad about Vanessa. They love their mother very much, and I respect that. He replied. Blake locked eyes with Vanessa for a brief moment. He saw the woman he once adored vulnerable and scared. But then his face hardened and the moment disappeared. After carefully examining all the evidence, the judge announced a recess. Angela turned to Blake and congratulated him on his performance in court. "You did very well. I think we have strong arguments," he said. Blake nodded nervously. His main concern was the welfare of the children. When the court resumed, the judge cleared her throat and announced her decision. After careful consideration of the evidence, it becomes clear that both parents love their children, but I have doubts about his ability to provide for them properly. In light of recent events, it has become clear that Mrs. Kincaid, he has consistently demonstrated a lack of stability and sanity. The judge continued. When the judge announced the decision, Blake waited anxiously for the result. As a result, Mr. Kincaid was granted full custody, and to Mrs. Kincaid, he was granted the right to visit the children under supervision. These rights will be valid only after she proves her stability and reliability. The judge also urged Mr. Kincaid to maintain a positive relationship between the children and their mother. Despite the difficult circumstances, Blake nodded in agreement, fully prepared to maintain a healthy bond between her children and her mother. "Absolutely, Your Honor," Blake replied. When the court session ended, he was overwhelmed by a wave of emotions. Relief for the victory and, at the same time, sadness for the consequences. Collecting her things, Vanessa approached him with tears in her eyes. "Are you satisfied now?" I whisper angrily. "You've stolen everything from me." Dismissing her accusations, Blake shook his head. "It's not about happiness, Vanessa. It's about protecting our children. I hope one day you will understand this," he said. With that, Blake left, leaving Vanessa to reflect on the consequences of the court's decision. Angela gently put her hand on Blake's shoulder, calming him down. "It's over, Blake. You made the right decision," he assured her. Blake nodded, his voice full of emotion. "Yes, now comes a difficult task. To help the kids get through this," he said. As he left the courtroom, Blake mentally prepared for the difficult conversations that lay ahead. Although he had won the trial, I knew that the emotional turmoil, it was far from over. There was silence in the courtroom. When Curtis Blackwood was introduced, he was handcuffed and wearing an orange suit. As they were preparing to testify, the prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, he got up to make an opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over the next few days, they will hear evidence of an elaborate robbery scheme being doped by the defendant, Curtis Blackwood. Mr. Blackwood abused the trust by stealing millions from his customers and his own company. We will prove you guilty of fraud and embezzlement without a doubt." She left the prosecutor, the lawyer of Curtis, a man with silver hair and a deep voice, object. He argued that the prosecution was weak, and it was based on circumstantial evidence and the words of disgruntled excitements. He insisted that his client, a respected businessman, he was actually the victim of a malicious conspiracy. "We will show that Mr. Blackwood, he is not guilty of these charges," he said confidently. As the trial continued, Blake was unexpectedly called to testify. The prosecutor turned to Blake with a stern look. "Could you explain how you found out about Mr. Blackwood's illegal behavior?" the prosecutor asked. Blake, he hesitated before speaking. "It all started when I found out about my wife's affair with Curtis. When I delve into this topic, I noticed inconsistencies in the financial documents, and I heard rumors about the transfer of large sums of money." Blake said, "What actions did you take after discovering this information?" the prosecutor asked. "I decided to contact Frank Doyle, the business partner of Curtis. Together, we collected more evidence, and finally, we contacted the law enforcement," Blake replied. The defense lawyer stood up for cross-examination, and he addressed himself directly to Mr. Kincaid. "It's true that he has a personal vendetta against my client, and that this whole case is motivated by revenge because of his wife's infidelity," Curtis' lawyer asked. Blake's jaw clenched as he replied with firmness. "The main thing in this case is the truth. Although I was offended by the romance, the embezzlement scheme is a completely different matter. I couldn't ignore the fact that innocent people, they were deceived. After the testimony of Mr. Kincaid, Frank Doyle took the floor. The prosecutor asked the man, "Doyle, could you explain your actions to the court? I must admit that, initially, my suspicions about Mr. Blackwood's activities were caused by small discrepancies on the books and customer complaints about the loss of funds. But when Blake came to me with his worries, everything fell into place. Together we decided to organize an operation to catch Cordes in the act." Frank said. During the trial, the lawyer tried to present me as the person who profited by the fall of Mr. Blackwood, and that he now controls the company. But Blake stood his ground, realizing that there was truth behind his actions, and that I needed to find out about Cordes's deception. Frank's eyes narrowed, and a feeling of discomfort settled in his stomach. I didn't want any of this to happen. Cordes was his friend and partner, but Frank couldn't stand idly by and to prove his illegal actions. While the trial was still, financial experts were studying the complex scheme that Cordes had devised to conceal his theft. Bank records and electronic correspondence. They were carefully examined as evidence. Finally, Marissa appeared in court. The prosecutor spoke to him in a soft tone, recognizing the complexity of the situation. "Mr. Blackwood, this must be incredibly difficult for you," said his voice full of sympathy. "Please tell us about the time you discovered, for the first time, the illegal actions of her husband." The prosecutor asked. Marissa Basilo's voice as she spoke. "I had no idea at first. Cordes was very private about his work. It wasn't until Black presented me with evidence of the affair that I started to connect the pieces. When I finally talked to Cordes, he confessed everything. He said it was for our good, for our future. But deep down, she knew it was unethical," Marissa said. The questions of Finser's lawyer. During the cross-examination, they were harsh. "I didn't know I was using the benefits. Finances received by her husband, as a result of embezzlement, did not enjoy a luxurious lifestyle, funded by their illegal activities," the lawyer asked. Marissa's eyes flashed with anger. "I lived comfortably thanks to my husband's legitimate business. They knew nothing of his criminal actions. If I had known, I would have reported it immediately," she replied. At the end of the trial, the prosecutor made a characterization, scathing of the greed and deceit of Cordes. The defendant was found guilty. Black and Marissa breathed a sigh of relief, realizing that justice had been done. I knew they would understand his lies. "Sus suro Marissa," with a sense of satisfaction in her voice. Black nodded in agreement, thankful that the truth had prevailed. They left the court together, grateful for the outcome of the trial. After careful deliberation, the jury returned a verdict in the case of defendant Cordes Blackwood. He was found guilty of fraud and conspiracy. When the judge announced the verdict, the courtroom filled with a collective sigh. Cordes, visibly unstable, he joined in a chair with a pale-faced. The judge's stern voice cut through the murmur, ordering Cordes to stand for sentencing. With trembling legs, Cordes got up to face the consequences of his actions. "Your behavior has caused enormous harm to those who trusted you, to your customers, business partners, and to society. He has used his position for selfish purposes, demonstrating a complete lack of empathy towards others. I have decided to sentence him to 15 years in federal prison, with a possibility of parole in 10 years. In addition, he will have to pay compensation to his victims in the amount of $5.5 million, the judge said. While Cordes was being carried, Black whispered to Marissa, "It's finally over. It's really over." Marissa nodded with tears shining in her eyes. Even though I knew she should feel relieved, she just felt empty. Black put his arm around her shoulders, comforting her. "It is normal to experiment with traditions. He was your husband," he reassured her. "But you made the right decision, Marissa. We both accept it," he added. As they were leaving the court, they were overtaken by a crowd of reporters. Black walked quickly towards Marissa, protecting it from camera flashes. "No comments," he said firmly, guiding her through the crowd of journalists. When they were at a safe distance, Marissa turned to Black, the gratitude shining in his eyes. "What's going to happen now?" he asked. Black sighed, feeling relieved. "Now we will try to move forward. One day at a time," he replied. As they went their separate ways, Black felt a burden lifted from his shoulders. The long odyssey was finally over. But now the most difficult thing was to rebuild their lives and help their children get back on their feet. 6 months later, Black was standing proudly in front of the newly opened car repair shop with Kate Honest Mechanics. The fresh paint was shining in the morning sun. As I was opening the doors for another day of work, Black's phone vibrated with Brenda's message. The day of the great discovery. I'm so proud of you, little brother. They'll be bringing coffee and donuts later. A smile was drawn on the face of Black, and he quickly replied to the message with thanks. When entering the store, he was greeted by a familiar voice. Papa, can I sweep the floor again? He asked from the small office. Black fondled his son's hair lovingly. Sure, buddy, I just took care of you with the tools, okay? Eli looked up from his homework spread out on the table. Admiration shone in his eyes. Papa, can we go to the park later? I've already finished my science project. Asked the Icon enthusiasm. That's nice, sweetie. We will definitely go if there are not too many people here. He replied as he started to pack. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Marissa came in with a bunch of flyers. Good morning, Blake. Take the flyers we talked about. Marissa said with a smile. Thank you, Marissa. How's the new business going? Blake asked, genuinely interested. Marissa's eyes lit up as she answered. Things are going well at the bakery. I didn't expect to find so much joy in this, but it seems that he has become, in a form of healing for me. It's a way to create something positive. After everything that's happened, he said. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of another customer. That Blake knew. Good morning, Mr. Johnson. How's the show going? Blake asked. As he got to work, Blake couldn't help but think, and how much he had changed. The store was thriving thanks to its reputation for honesty and to the support of the community. Meanwhile, Marissa had discovered her vocation as a baker. Ebenezer was meeting Dina in prison. Brenda noticed the beautiful handmade jewelry that Blake made in his spare time, admired his talent, and suggested that he turn his hobby in a small and successful business. Blake, she hesitated at first, but Brenda was persistent. She helped him to open an online store and to create social media accounts to show off their creations. Thanks to the support and guidance of Brenda, Blake's business took off quickly. Buyers were attracted by the unique designs and the high quality of Blake's products. Orders started coming in, and soon Blake was able to quit your main job and focus completely on your business. Now, as they were sitting in the newly renovated Blake's workshop, surrounded by shelves full of jewelry, glistening, Brenda smiled at her brother. Look at you, Mr. Businessman. I'm kidding. Blake laughed, grateful for Brenda's support and encouragement. I'm just trying to earn an honest living, he replied. But deep down, she knew she was living her dream, thanks to her sister's unwavering faith in her talent. Blake watched as a woman carefully enter the store. Her eyes were kind, and her smile was warm. Can I help you? He asked. The woman nodded. I'm Rachel, Ellie and Noah's new school counselor. I just wanted to stop by and introduce myself. I've heard a lot of good things about your store, he said. Blake felt a sudden surge in his chest. Oh, thank you. Nice to meet you, Rachel. How have the children adapted to school? He asked. Rachel's smile widened even more. Are they great? He replied. As they were talking, Blake realized that he really appreciated the presence of Rachel. She was not only smart and kind, but he also sincerely cared about the well-being of their children. When Rachel left, Brenda shot Blake a meaningful look. She seems nice, he commented. Blake felt a flush rise up his cheeks. Yes, she's very nice. When the end of the day came, Blake finished his work and returned home with the children. While I was cooking dinner, I was reflecting on the progress that they had achieved, and he felt grateful that people, as Rachel, would have come into their lives. And so the story ended. Thank you, dear viewer, for your time. The cheaters got what they deserved. Please leave a real like and subscribe to the channel. Share your impressions about the video. It is very important to me that the force is with you. This is the end of my story. Subscribe to not miss more stories like this, because this story can happen to anyone, and I may have warned you from bad consequences. See you sometime tomorrow.